This is Matthew Kratter from Trade University, and today I want to talk a little bit about Bitcoin and greater fool theory. You'll see this a lot in my comments. You'll see it a lot among critics of Bitcoin. For example, here's Frank 6013 saying, this is a moronic argument. Why would you take it as a given that Bitcoin's adoption will approach 100%? It has no use as a currency. It has no use for anyone except for people trying to speculate on its price. What do any of you use Bitcoin for? Nothing. You just buy it, hoping to sell it for a higher price to a greater fool in the future. There's no actual use. Adoption will never substantially increase. Now, this argument, this greater fool theory argument, was an argument that was chiefly popularized by Warren Buffett and Charlie Muppet, fiat billionaires, kings of fiat junk food like Coke and Kraft Foods. These are people who never met a banker that they didn't like. They're also huge beneficiaries, as we've talked about on this channel, of the large U.S. financial banking bailouts. So it's not surprising that two old guys like this, who don't really understand anything about tech, are not fans of Bitcoin, and they apply this category of greater fool theory to it. So this is the essence of the argument that Frank was making and that Charlie Muppet and Warren Buffett make. The essence is you're a fool to buy Bitcoin to begin with, and the only way you can make a profit is by selling your Bitcoin to an even greater fool. Now, to begin with, I want you to notice the deeply embedded fiat mindset of anyone who talks like this. They display zero understanding of fiat monetary debasement. They're so confused, or in the case of Buffett and Munger, so compromised that they're actually happier to attack Bitcoin than attacking the real enemies, which are the central bankers and the politicians who run huge deficits and make a country take on so much debt that then needs to be monetized by the central bank. So if you're attacking Bitcoin and you're defending central bankers and politicians, you really are taking the side of the devil, in my opinion. These people fail to understand that Bitcoin could be complete garbage and yet still appreciate a lot in fiat terms, not because you're selling it to a greater fool, but simply because Bitcoin is scarce and fiat is not. So what's the heart of this argument? It really is this. You can't do anything with Bitcoin. It's not a productive asset. All you can do is sell it to a greater fool. Now, that's actually completely false. And I would say that anyone who makes this argument is either a corrupt liar like Buffett or Munger, or someone who's just unwilling to do 5 minutes of Googling. There's actually something quite significant that you can do with your Bitcoin besides sell it to a greater fool. You can send your Bitcoin to anyone on the planet using Bitcoin's global and neutral financial network in a peer-to-peer manner, in a P2P manner, and without needing to ask a bank for permission. Now, obviously, you can see why Buffett doesn't want you to bypass banks, but for many people who don't like or trust banks, this might be a useful function or feature to have. You can also take your Bitcoin and send it to a politician or a human rights advocate who is trying to help overthrow a violent and corrupt regime in another country. You can also take your Bitcoin and send it to someone in the global south or somewhere else who needs it to pay for food or shelter without having to pay Western Union a 40% commission. So there's this remittances use as well, which is quite obvious, as well as the obvious use of using it in political systems where you don't have access, or where the opposition does not have access to a bank account, in Russia, for example. So I would have to ask, why do greater fool theory proponents never mention these uses? These are actual uses for Bitcoin. Bitcoin itself is very volatile, of course, but if you're already paying a 40% commission to Western Union, is Bitcoin really going to move 40% between when you send it and when the person receives it 10 minutes later? Probably not. It's still probably a much better deal. And as Bitcoin adoption increases, this volatility will subside, of course. So why do greater fool theory proponents never mention these uses? Could it be that they're apologists for the fiat financial system like Buffett and Munger are? If you're enjoying this video so far and you want to support my mission of Bitcoin education, I'd encourage you to help out the channel by hitting that subscribe button right now if you're not already subscribed, hitting the like button, and leaving a comment, preferably a question or a suggestion about what you would like me to cover next. Now, here's something else that you can do with your Bitcoin besides sell it to a greater fool. You can store it in your house or elsewhere on a hardware wallet, along with a 12-word recovery seed engraved on a steel plate to protect it from water and fire. If you store your Bitcoin in this way, you don't have to trust Coinbase, you don't have to trust Gemini, you don't have to trust FTX. There's zero counterparty risk. You also don't have to trust a bank not to freeze or steal your money. You don't have to trust the central bank not to debase your money by printing more of it. Is there anywhere on earth that this feature or function might be useful? I can think of a lot of places. Argentina, that had nearly 100% inflation in 2022. We have Turkey, of course, which is another place with very high inflation. Zimbabwe, Lebanon. The list of countries goes on and on. We have the example of the bail-ins in Cyprus, where depositors, their money above a certain amount was just completely confiscated or taxed very heavily before you could withdraw it. And Bitcoin is also a way of dealing with U.S. central bankers who have not been exactly competent. This is Powell saying originally that that inflation was going to be transitory, and of course he got that completely wrong. So if you don't want your money to be managed by a bunch of idiots like central bankers, or a bunch of corrupt idiots like central bankers, Bitcoin is a way out. Now, there's a related argument that Buffett uses as well, and it's related to greater fool theory. Basically, it's this: Bitcoin has no cash flow, it's not productive. Now, the response to this is, of course, it doesn't. Bearer assets never have cash flow. The physical cash in your pocket or wallet or purse produces zero cash flow, unless, of course, you deposit it in a bank. A gold bar on your desk produces zero cash flow. Jewelry produces zero cash flow. A Picasso on your wall produces zero cash flow unless you lend it out to a museum, for example. Are these assets also worth zero just because they don't produce cash flow? It's unfair to apply the model of equities and cash flow to bearer assets and to currencies, as Buffett does with this analogy. These assets, gold, Bitcoin, a Picasso, physical cash, with the possible exception of the physical cash, have zero counterparty risk. The physical cash, theoretically, the government could turn off those particular serial numbers, but it's fairly unlikely, and you could probably still spend it pretty easily and pretty anonymously. Now, you can only create cash flow for a bearer asset by lending it out, and as we saw in the last couple of years with Bitcoin, this comes with its own risks, as we saw with Celsius and BlockFi and all of these other services, Voyager, that offered cash flow and yield, and then they ended up not giving you your Bitcoin back. If you hold Bitcoin or physical gold in self-custody, no one can freeze them or turn them off. There's no counterparty risk. This is what we mean by bearer asset. And this is definitely not true for cash held in a bank or stocks or bonds held in a brokerage account. These are not bearer assets because they have counterparty risk, and someone can turn off your account or freeze it or make you do something you don't want to do in order to get the money out. So I would say in a world of political persecution, World Economic Forum dominated narratives, central bank debasement, and CBDCs being rolled out in countries like China and probably coming to the US at some point, is there actually zero use for a digital bearer asset that's neutral, that's global, that cannot be debased, that cannot be censored like Bitcoin is? It's a true digital bearer asset, and it's the only form of neutral money that we have for all the reasons that I've discussed on this channel. So I would say to Warren Muppet and Charlie Muppet and all the other critics, Peter Schiff, etc., how about showing some intellectual humility for once? Bitcoin has a market cap, in spite of all the crashes, still has a market cap of $400 billion, which I believe is comparable to Berkshire Hathaway at this point. And Bitcoin is traded in the tens of billions and now hundreds of billions of dollars in terms of market cap for many, many years now. Could it be possible that you're the one who's wrong, Mr. Muppet and Mrs. Muppet? If a tulip bubble lasts for 14 years, is it still a bubble? And for those of you who want to learn more about Bitcoin and how it relates to the tulip bubble, I will link to this video in the description notes below, as well as this related video about Bitcoin being an unproductive asset. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit that subscribe and like button. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.